It is eerie how similar this day is to the day 9/11 10 years ago. It was sunny and bright, a kind of balmy September day. And it wasn't until the early part of the morning that all of us can remember exactly where we were when we got the first news. And then we became transfixed by the images on television, the endless video loops of the planes crashing into the World Trade Center towers, shots of the Pentagon burning, and later images of the plane Flight 93 that landed in Pennsylvania. We were overwhelmed individually and collectively. There was emotional overload. It was difficult to know how to process what was unfolding before our very eyes. Our emotions were first of all a desire to pray for the dead, to comfort those who were missing loved ones, to hope that no more incidents would happen, because there were rumors everywhere as they began to force all of the airplanes in the skies to land. It wasn't until the last plane was on the ground that we had a sense that the horrors of that particular day were over. And then we began to see the pictures, the photographs of those who were missing, and the messages from their loved ones, from a spouse, a parent, a child, a next-door neighbor, a loved one, saying those words that so often we hesitate to say to one another in everyday life. I miss you. I hope you have been spared from harm. I assure you I will continue to pray and look for you until you have been found. And then those who were formally entrusted with the well-being of others, the police and firefighters, and others who assist in that task, began to pour in to all of these places, trying to do what they do so well, to search for the missing, to recover bodies and body parts, to try to bring some kind of closure to those who were in the midst of uncertainty. We struggled here, and so on that day when we began to think about how we could find some context, some setting in which the Notre Dame community could gather together as you have here today, we did what we always do. We gathered in prayer to seek God's comfort and to be assured of God's presence active in our lives. But we also wanted to be there for each other. As I came out to begin the concelebrated liturgy by the flagpole on the South Quad, it was amazing to look into people's eyes, to see the couple hundred people who were singing as a spontaneous choir, to see the presence of the Muslim Student Association from Notre Dame, who were an integral part of who we were and what we were about. And we wanted to assure them of our comfort and our presence. The Mass went on as always. There was a chance to think about how God could be discovered in the midst of the revelation of the evil that human beings can do to one another. One of my most vivid memories was when, at the Lord's Prayer, when normally you gather hands, they locked arms like the alma mater. It was a way that we could have intimate personal contact with one another, to say, I'll be there for you now and in the days ahead. At the end of Mass, as we processed off, no one wanted to leave. There was utter silence. It was as if we didn't want to go back so quickly and read the further accounts of those who were missing and dead. We wanted to let God be present, to comfort and to console. There was no game the next week. All the games across the country were called off. But the next home game, we had an opportunity as a family, with flags in the stadium, with people with buckets trying to raise money at halftime, that we might give some kind of financial support to the families of those who were dead and missing. It was also a chance at the beginning, before the game began, to say a prayer before a national television audience, really the first game that had been telecast after the sorrowful events. It was a way that Notre Dame once again could say, when it comes to sorrow and woe and grief and the sense of loss, what we bring to the table, so to speak, is an utter conviction that God is present to us no matter what else might befall. I had a hunger personally to go and visit Ground Zero. And 30 days out, as a guest of the New York City Police and Fire Department, I was given total access to that horrible setting. It was like a picture of hell from medieval drawings. And yet it was a sacred place indeed. As the police and firefighters and other volunteers tried to hunt for bodies and body parts, the acrid smell, the constant sound, the lighting at night, and yet, despite all the noise, as soon as any body part or body was found, utter silence, the playing of taps, and the carrying off in a very dignified fashion, covered by an American flag, the body to the morgue. The next day, I went up on top of one of the surrounding buildings in New York City with two police officers. One of them described being between the two towers and then running down the escalator, having a sense that the first one was going to come down. And standing in front of him were all these gawkers next to one of the buildings, and he yelled, "Run, run!" And as far as he knew no one left, and he was able to make it around to the other side of the building. And the other one had been trapped in the Marriott Hotel in one of the towers. And he and his colleagues had a flashlight, and they could see that the beams holding up the ceiling had cracked, and they were very close to losing their lives. They hunted to find some place to get away, and finally they did, among the very last to escape the horror. After we came down from the building, we went off to a memorial site where there were pictures of missing police and fire with messages from their families. And he went around by himself and slowly read all of those letters. And after it was all over, I asked him what he was thinking. And he said that it could have been me missing, and it would have been a letter from my wife and from my children. Why did I make it when so many were lost? We struggle in the midst of situations like this to make sense of reality, the human capacity for evil, a recognition of our need for solidarity and support in the most difficult times that we inevitably face. When I was thinking about what I could say at the Mass that might be comforting, I recalled the beautiful statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which is right in front of the main building. A statue with outstretched arms, with the heart as the symbol of Christ's constant and powerful love, and with the little message underneath it in Latin, venite ad me omnes, the beginning of the phrase we read in the gospel tonight, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That is a comfort and consolation that all of us can take in the face of a death in the family, a natural disaster, war or famine, or the things that can strike in the human condition. We are all fragile and fallible. We all make mistakes. We all can suffer because we're creatures of flesh and blood. And yet in the midst of that, the God who loves us has abided with us, has shared the human condition, has manifest God's eternal and perpetual love. That powerful image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus is but one way of imagining why we can be here together, to pray for the dead, to pray for those who mourn their loss, to recognize even in our family here at Notre Dame, we have known loss in 9/11. And so in our memory, we recall what once was. We recognize that when we are our best in this community, we are together in mutual support and in prayer. Let our presence here tonight be one more sign that God abides in this community, a community of faith, of intellectual inquiry, and of service.